elephant and the rabbit, and the squirrel and the kangaroo, playing hopscotch in the jungle with nothing much to do, when along came Noah with a puzzled look and a blueprint in his hand. Gotta build me an ark of gopher wood and go floating on the land. Now, when I was a youngster, my folks sent me off to spend the summer with my grandparents in a small town in western Arkansas. And part of that summer was to spend a week down at the Vacation Bible School of the First Baptist Church of Van Buren, Arkansas, which meant that I would gather down there with some other children that I saw every summer, but it included a young fellow named Barlow Bushmeyer. Now, Barlow was some kind of cousin. His grandmother and my grandmother were sisters, so y'all genealogists can figure that out for me. And Barlow was one of these young fellows who is just inspirational. He's charismatic. He's just one of these young men that just leads the rest of us around by the nose. Barlow was the fella that first showed me how to roll a cigarette out back behind the house with his pack of Bull Durham tobacco and cigarette papers. And that was a skill that Barlow became very useful later on in his life. To this day, Barlow can still roll, well, something. Ms. Poindexter was the teacher one summer, and Ms. Poindexter had led us through the beginning of the story of Noah, which I'm sure y'all are very familiar with, and that was the lead-in of this little song. And Barlow stuck his hand up one day as she got through that story, and that was Ms. Poindexter's first mistake. She said, "Yes, Barlow, what's your question?" And he said, "Ms. Poindexter, what happened to the dinosaurs?" Now, generations, all among them, little young adolescent boys have been obsessed with dinosaurs just forever. In my day, we even had a gas company that had a dinosaur as its logo, and we all saw that, and they were called brontosaurus. As I understand, they've changed the name now. So then Ms. Poindexter made her second mistake and said, "Well, I don't really know, Barlow." And Barlow turned to the rest of us and said, "Betcha I know." And then that was kind of like fly fishing. Barlow put that fly out, and it kind of went over that riffle and floated around there. And poor Ms. Poindexter just came up, and she said to him, "Well, Barlow, why don't you tell us why?" And Barlow says, "Well, you know that Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Japheth, and Shem." And Ms. Poindexter was just stunned by Barlow's biblical erudition. And he turned around to the rest of us and says, "Now we all, boy, know what happens when our daddies find that something crazy idea like building an ark. And we know what's going to happen. And those boys, saw them animals lining up, and they knew who was going to be shoveling poop." And nothing is funnier to adolescent boys than any mention of excrement. And we just started howling. I mean, it was like a bunch of coyote pups had just seen the moon for the first time. And he said, "Ms. Poindexter, I know what happened. Them boys went on strike, just like them coal miners out in Kentucky. And they just said, they saw them dinosaurs lining up and said, 'No, we ain't going to shovel that.' And we're going to go on strike." And said, "No more poop. no more, come on, no more poop, no more poop, by God. And he's dancing around the room, and we're all shouting and dancing like refugees from Lord of the Flies. And he's up near the front room, and he doesn't hear that everything's starting to get real quiet behind him. And Barlow turns around, and there is Brother William, pastor, First Baptist Church, Van Buren, Arkansas. Now, Brother William is famous for his lack of tolerance towards adolescent boys. He's been known to say that the proper way to deal with them is to put them in a leaky John boat and push them out into the Arkansas River and feed them to alligator gar and catfish. And he turns to Ms. Poindexter and says, "Is this Bushmar boy giving you any trouble, Ms. Poindexter?" And I swear to you, the angel of forgiveness came down upon Ms. Poindexter, and she looked at Barlow, and he looked at her, and he said, "No, Brother William, I think Barlow just got a little enthusiastic. Isn't that right, Barlow?" Barlow lowered his eyes, and he said, "Yes, ma'am." And Brother William said, "Well, I'll leave you to it." And he walked out of the room. Barlow went back. Now, if Ms. Poindexter had a ukulele or an old guitar, or even a banjo, well, I'm not sure about that, and she knew this song by Gamble Rogers, good friend of mine who's now passed on, well, we could finish up this song. Last night I saw this awful sight. I was talking to the loon, and the Big Dipper turned up sideways, pouring silver on the moon. Well, the bear was strangled in the flood, so swift it was and strong. Well, starry ship was sailing there, 300 cubits long. Well, the beaver cut the timbers down, and an elephant laid the keel. Sawfish sawed the ribs and planks, and hummingbirds, the termites carved the wheel. And a crew of silkworms spun the sails, and hummingbirds took stitch. And a crew of bumblebees caulked all the seams with black bitumen pitch. Then she sailed across the mountainside, all on that stormy tide. Well, storm and flood and lightning blast to be seen on every side. But the angels on Mount Ararat will tell us to this day how the animals built an ark for man, 'cause they know that perfect way, how the animals built an ark for man, 'cause they know that perfect way. Dragonfly, dragonfly, can you look up and watch the sky? Can you look up and watch the sky? Dragonfly, dragonfly, please tell the angels to pass me by. Please tell the angels to pass me by. Back in 1968, I was a young infantry captain, and I was an advisor to the Vietnamese, and I lived in Pleiku, Vietnam at that time. One day, we all went out on a pretty big operation down to the Crow's Foot area southeast of Pleiku. I was advising a Vietnamese company and had a sergeant with me. It was a hot day. We walked through an abandoned rubber plantation. We set up an evening defense in the derelict Montagnard village. Saw the cooking fires, smell the rice cooking, listen to that sound of Vietnamese being spoken, kind of a sing-songy, like birds chirping. We set up the defense for the evening. I smoked a couple of cigarettes before it got too dark and I couldn't smoke anymore. My sergeant and I took 4-hour shifts, and we both got up at first light, just before first light, and we had to stand to. When the sun came up, kind of burned away the mist. Finally had another cigarette, and I made a cup of coffee. This is how we made coffee in those days. I could take a canteen cup and put about half full of water and get a packet of instant coffee and find an old C ration can and put holes along the bottom sides of it. Get a chunk of C4 explosive and put that down inside the can and put a match to it, and burns in this bright blue flame. Put the canteen cup on it, and heat you up a cup of coffee. My boss came in on the radio and he said, we're going to let all the Vietnamese take over for the rest of the day. I want y'all to come up and just tell them that you're going, and come on up. I got something I want to show you. He left to the last of that transmission. He said, bring soap. So we went up, and we about 2-3 kilometers away, and the rest of the teams came in, and he said, come on, follow me. And he put out a couple of platoons of Vietnamese on both sides of this jungle stream. So we followed that stream up and came out on this beautiful, beautiful jungle pond. Thick green trees around it, orchids, bright birds flickering, and a little waterfall at the end of it. He said, y'all go first. So we did. I took off my steel helmet and laid my rifle down and my pistol down and my knives and my ammunition, flak vest, hand grenades, my shirt and my trousers, and I waded out into that blood-warm water, soaked down. I stood underneath that waterfall, rinsed off. And I stepped out into a moment of pure, pure grace. Right in front of me was this magnificent blue-green dragonfly just hovering there, just dancing in the air. Dragonfly, dragonfly. Can you look up and watch the sky? Can you look up and watch the sky?